So with the Battle of Coruscant behind us, let's take a closer look at what this battle means and how it played a role in the outcome of the war, because the Battle of Coruscant is a massive battle that has huge implications for the future of the CIS. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So as we get near the end of the war, we've discussed the significance of the Battle of Scipio, but today we're going to take a closer look at the Battle of Coruscant, a battle that arguably had the largest impact on the end of the conflict, larger than nearly any other battle in the war. The Battle of Coruscant represented a major blow to the Separatists that was ultimately the final nail in their coffin. And while they would keep fighting for a few more weeks, this battle ultimately represented the last major effort they had. So let's talk about why this battle was so significant and what occurred in the aftermath of the Battle of Coruscant that really doomed the CIS. First off, let's start with the elephant in the room, the death of Count Dooku. Count Dooku was the head of state for the CIS, and their both de facto and de jure leader. He led the Separatist Senate and was the commander-in-chief of the Separatist military. Throughout the entire duration of the war, he had been commanding Separatist forces across the galaxy, so his death at the hands of Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker during the Battle of Coruscant was a major blow to the CIS power structure, leaving a massive hole at the top of the Separatist chain of command. Now, most logical governments would have some sort of line of succession in place for the death of a head of state. However, it appears that the CIS, if they did have this in place, didn't necessarily follow it, likely due to what might have been a sort of under-the-table coup by the Separatist military under the command of General Grievous, who we see more or less take the place of Count Dooku, leading the droid army and leading the Separatists. And while I can't really imagine General Grievous getting before the Separatist Senate, I can definitely see him leading the military side of the CIS, and ultimately that's where all the power is. So ultimately, the Battle of Coruscant replaced the level-headed leadership of Count Dooku with the sporadic, militaristic, violent leadership of General Grievous, who only sought to destroy the Jedi Order and the Republic, even though one could argue that Count Dooku wanted very similar goals. And Grievous's leadership is sloppy at best, only held together by the fact that he's still taking orders from Sidious, who is masterminding the whole war, mind you, and ultimately it leads to a place that likely, without the death of Dooku, we would have eventually got, but it got us there much quicker, with Grievous, by order of Sidious, sending the Separatist Council off to Mustafar to hide as Republic forces encroach closer and closer into Separatist territory. And with the line of succession being thrown off by the death of Count Dooku, any reasonable succession that would have had different layers to it to cover the death of various leaders was basically thrown off base, because now the leader was General Grievous, and he didn't have the time, or likely the intention, of setting up who would lead the Separatists in the event of his death. But beyond the death of Count Dooku, there were major impacts that the Battle of Coruscant had on the Separatist military and the functionality of the Separatist government beyond this change in head of state. The Separatists threw a massive portion of their naval forces into the Battle of Coruscant. It was a really big military gamble, and one that they ultimately lost, failing to achieve their primary objectives, and losing vast swaths of warships that would cripple the Separatist navy for the remainder of the war. Without a large navy, Separatist forces were not able to hold Republic capital ships in orbit above planets, and instead Republic capital ships were able to get much closer to the battlefield for the remaining engagements throughout the war. In fact, we don't know of any other really major space battles that occurred after this point in the conflict, likely because the Separatist navy was so significantly depleted, both from 2.5 years of war and this major assault carried out in the final weeks of the conflict. That would leave the Separatist ground forces more vulnerable to orbital strikes and allow Republic troops to deploy closer to the battlefield. We see this in play during the Battle of Utapau, where Republic capital ships are able to basically come down right over the Separatist command center. So in between losing the banks in the Battle of Scipio, which cut off Separatist funding, and now losing Count Dooku and a vast portion of the Separatist fleet in the Battle of Coruscant, things are really not looking good for the CIS. and future battles aren't going to do them any other favors. The other major battle coming up is the Battle of Utapau, which we'll get to eventually. There's a few battles I want to cover before then. And that battle saw the death of General Grievous, leaving the Separatist alliance basically leaderless and confused in those final hours in between the death of General Grievous and the massacre of the Separatist Council on Mustafar. The stage is now set for these final few battles of the Clone Wars, and as we move forward into events like the Battle of Utapau, we're going to start to see the collapse of the Separatist alliance become more and more rapid, the beginning of the fall of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Ultimately, I would say the Battle of Coruscant is more important than the Battle of Scipio, which ultimately changed the economic playing field for the entire remainder of the war. If you'd like to learn about why the Battle of Scipio was so important, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments whether you think the Separatists could have recovered from the Battle of Coruscant. Let's assume for a sec that they're not being puppeted by Palpatine and can make their own decisions. Do you think there's a way for the Separatist alliance to sort of pull back from the brink here, or do you think they're basically doomed at this point? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.